still awake at 2 a.m. Again, your body is exhausted, but your mind won't stop replaying everything. Overthinking, stress, that quiet anxiety that gets louder in the dark. You're not the only one struggling with insomnia tonight. And no, there's nothing wrong with you. This is your safe space to slow down, a gentle voice to guide you into deep sleep, a place where racing thoughts soften, breathing steadies, and your nervous system finally lets go. Take a slow breath in, hold it for a moment, and exhale right here. The overthinking starts to quiet. Right now, sleep begins. Let yourself sink deeper into your pillow now. Feel the weight of your head pressing gently into the softness beneath you. Your shoulders drop. Your breathing slows. Tonight, we travel together to a time long before cities, before farms, before written words. We journey back 30,000 years to a world of ice and starlight, where the first tentative threads of an ancient partnership were woven between two species. Close your eyes and let the modern world fade away. We are going back to the time when wolves walked out of the darkness and into the circle of firelight, beginning a bond that would forever change the course of human history. The cold is what you notice first. It seeps into everything in this world, this time at the height of the last ice age. Temperatures that would make even the hardiest modern soul retreat indoors. Temperatures that hover well below freezing for months at a stretch. The wind carries crystals of ice, fine as powder, that sting any exposed skin. The landscape stretches vast and open, a steppe of tough grasses and scattered stands of spruce trees, their branches heavy with frost. The sky above is impossibly clear, filled with more stars than you have ever seen, their light cold and distant against a black vault of night. But here, in this small clearing, there is warmth. A fire burns in a shallow hearth, carefully constructed, flat and open to catch the maximum heat from every piece of precious fuel. The flames dance orange and gold, sending sparks spiraling upward into the darkness. The fire is fed with spruce wood, carefully gathered during the day's travels, each piece placed with intention. The wood crackles and pops, releasing the sharp, clean scent of burning resin. Sometimes, when meat has been cooked earlier in the evening, the smell of roasted flesh still hangs in the air, mixing with the smoke. Around the fire, a small group of humans huddles close. They wear layers of animal hide, carefully sewn together, the fur turned inward for warmth. Their faces are weathered by wind and sun, their hands strong from constant work. They are hunter-gatherers, these people, following the migrations of great herds across the frozen landscape. They know every edible plant that can survive in this harsh climate, every sign that speaks of animal movement, every subtle shift in weather. Their knowledge is vast, accumulated over countless generations, passed down in stories and demonstrations around fires just like this one. The fire creates a circle of safety, a sphere of light and warmth that pushes back the immense darkness beyond. Beyond its glow, the world is black and unknowable. The cold wind moans across the open steppe, carrying sounds from far away. The creak of ice, the distant call of some night bird, and sometimes, if you listen carefully, the faint sound of paws on frozen earth. They are out there, just beyond the firelight. The wolves. In the darkness, you can see their eyes first. Pairs of eyes that catch the firelight and reflect it back, glowing pale green or amber. They hover at the edge of visibility, appearing and disappearing as the wolves shift position. These are not the wolves you might know from nature documentaries. These Ice Age wolves are larger, heavier, more robust than their modern descendants. Some stand nearly 3 feet at the shoulder, weighing 150 pounds or more of muscle and fur and teeth, designed for bringing down prey far larger than themselves. They have broad skulls, powerful jaws, teeth made for gripping and tearing. They are apex predators, hunters who take down horses and bison, and even, when the pack works together, young mammoths. For thousands of years, the relationship between humans and wolves has been complex. Sometimes competitors, hunting the same prey, sometimes adversaries, when a wolf pack grows bold enough to test a human camp, or when humans find a wolf den and fear for their safety. The wolves are cautious, these wild creatures. They do not approach the fire. They do not trust the upright figures that move on 2 legs instead of 4. But they watch. Always they watch. The camp has been at this spot for 3 days now, part of a seasonal migration following the reindeer herds that move across the tundra. Tomorrow, or perhaps the day after, the group will pack up their few possessions and move on, following ancient routes their ancestors have traveled for generations. But while they are here, they leave their mark. Bones from the hunt, stripped of meat, scraps of hide too damaged to use for clothing, the remains of their meals, scattered at the edges of camp where the fire's protection begins to fade into darkness. And the wolves have learned. Not just these wolves watching tonight, but wolves across many generations. They have learned that where humans camp, food can sometimes be found. Not easy food, not fresh kills that the wolves might guard and defend, but scraps, remnants, bones with marrow still inside that can be cracked with powerful jaws, pieces of meat too small or too burnt for human appetite. It is not much, but in the lean times of the Ice Age, it is something. Night after night, across seasons and years, some wolves grow bolder. Not all of them. Most remain in the deep darkness, too wary of the fire and the strange 2-legged creatures to venture close. But there are always a few in every generation who are more curious than afraid. Wolves whose temperament is just slightly different. A little less aggressive, a little more willing to take risks, a little more comfortable in the presence of humans. These are the ones who creep closer to the camp after the humans have settled in for the night, who wait until the fire burns low, when the humans are drowsy with food and warmth, wrapped in their furs. The bolder wolves learn that if they move slowly, if they do not make sudden movements or threatening gestures, the humans sometimes allow their approach. A wolf might slip into the camp's edge, snatch a discarded bone, and vanish back into the darkness. If the humans stir, the wolf freezes. If they reach for a weapon, the wolf flees. But if they simply watch, the wolf grows accustomed to their presence. Imagine that moment, repeated over and over across generations. A wolf and a human, regarding each other across the dying embers of a fire. The wolf's eyes reflect the red glow. Its breath makes small clouds in the frigid air. The human, half asleep, watches this wild creature with a mixture of wariness and something else. Recognition, perhaps. These wolves hunt in packs, just as humans do. They communicate with each other through subtle body language and vocalizations. They care for their young. They feel fear and courage, hunger and satisfaction. In some fundamental way, humans and wolves are not so different, and slowly, over time measured not in months, but in generations, the distance between them begins to close. Some wolves begin to follow the human groups on their migrations, not close, not as members of the group, but as shadows on the periphery. They scavenge what the humans leave behind. They alert the humans inadvertently to the presence of other predators. When a wolf pack howls at an approaching danger, the humans hear the warning. When the wolves track game, humans sometimes follow, observing where the pack leads. The benefits begin to flow both ways, though neither species understands it in those terms. The wolves gain access to food scraps and the protection that comes from the humans' fire and weapons, which keep larger predators at bay. The humans gain an early warning system and sometimes assistance in tracking game. A wolf's nose can detect prey from distances that human senses cannot match. Their ears hear sounds too faint for human perception. When the wolves grow excited following a scent trail, the humans learn to pay attention. There comes a night, impossible to pinpoint in history, when something changes. Perhaps it is a particularly cold evening, when the wind carries ice and snow, and the temperature drops so low that even movement becomes difficult. The fire burns hot in its hearth, reaching the temperatures above 600 degrees at its center. The wood carefully tended by humans who have mastered the art of firemaking with a sophistication that would impress even modern observers. The warmth radiates outward, and everything beyond its reach is frozen and hostile. A wolf approaches the fire that night. Not a bold wolf, not particularly, but a hungry one. The winter has been hard, and the hunting poor. The wolf is young, still learning the ways of the pack, and it has become separated from its kin. It smells the camp from far away and follows the scent of cooking meat. By the time it reaches the edge of the firelight, its caution has been worn down by desperation and cold. The humans see the wolf. They watch as it sinks down just at the edge of the light, close enough to feel some of the fire's warmth, but far enough to flee if threatened. The wolf does not approach the fire itself. The flames are still too strange, too dangerous to its instincts, but it stays. It curls into a tight ball, its thick fur protecting it from the worst of the cold, its nose tucked under its tail. And there it remains through the long night, a wild creature choosing for the first time to sleep in the presence of humans. In the morning, when the humans wake and begin to stir, the wolf is still there. One of the humans tosses a bone toward the wolf, a bone with some meat still clinging to it. The wolf watches the human's movements, tense, ready to spring away. But the human makes no threatening gesture. The bone lands in the snow between the fire and the place where the wolf lies. The wolf waits. The human turns away, back to other tasks. Slowly, the wolf rises and approaches the bone. It takes the offering in its jaws and retreats to a safe distance, where it can eat and watch the camp at the same time. This happens again the next night, and the next. The wolf begins to anticipate the bone, the scrap of food that comes when the humans have finished their meal. It learns the rhythms of the camp. When the humans wake, when they hunt, when they rest, it begins to move closer, drawn by food and warmth and perhaps something else, some deep ancestral capacity for connection that exists in both species. Other wolves come and go at the camp's edges. but this one stays. Over the course of that winter, as the group moves from place to place, the wolf follows. It is no longer a wild creature existing separately. It is becoming something new, not quite domesticated, not yet a companion in the way that dogs would later become, but a bridge between two worlds, a wolf that chooses to live alongside humans rather than apart from them. The transformation takes generations. This first wolf, this pioneer, is followed by others. The ones that are friendlier, more tolerant of human presence, are the ones that gain the most benefit from the association. They eat better than their purely wild cousins. They are warmer. They begin to breed with others like themselves, and their offspring inherit their temperament. Slowly, without anyone consciously guiding the process, a new kind of canine begins to emerge. One that is comfortable with humans, one that looks to humans for food and protection, one that eventually will work alongside humans as true partners. But that first night, when the wolf curled up at the edge of the firelight and chose to stay rather than flee, something profound occurred. A predator became a potential partner. A wild creature took the first step toward domestication, and humans, perhaps without fully understanding what they were witnessing, extended the circle of their protection to include a species that had once been their competitor. As you drift toward sleep now, imagine that scene. The fire burning bright in its ancient hearth. The humans wrapped in furs, their breath making clouds in the frozen air. The wolf at the edge of the light, its eyes reflecting the flames, its body slowly relaxing as it realizes it is safe. The vast darkness beyond, where other wolves still hunt and the wind still carries ice. But where this one wolf has chosen a different path. This is where it began, the partnership that would lead to countless breeds, from the smallest lapdog to the largest working breeds. The relationship that would see dogs pulling sleds across Arctic waste, herding sheep on windswept hills, guiding the blind, comforting the lonely, and simply sitting beside humans as we stare into fires, just as we did 30,000 years ago. As the echoes of the last tale softly fade into the distance, we find ourselves drifting once more into a quiet, in-between space. A place where one story gently releases its hold and another patiently waits to unfold. The air feels softer here, as if time itself has slowed to a peaceful hush, inviting us to settle in and listen closely to what comes next. Imagine for a moment the eyes of a wolf, not the soft, pleading gaze of your family dog, but the sharp, intense stare of a wild predator. In the world of wolves, eye contact carries weight, carries meaning, carries danger. When a wolf locks eyes with another, it is rarely a moment of affection or connection. Instead, it is a message written in the language of dominance and submission, a silent declaration of status and intent. Within a wolf pack, the hierarchy is maintained through countless small interactions, and eye contact sits at the heart of many of them. A dominant wolf, secure in its position at the top of the social order, will hold its gaze steady and unwavering. Its stare is direct, intense, a challenge that demands acknowledgement. The message is clear. I am above you. Recognize my authority. A subordinate wolf, understanding this unspoken rule, will typically avert its eyes, look away, signal submission through the simple act of breaking visual contact. To hold that gaze, to stare back at a dominant wolf, would be to issue a challenge, to question the established order, to risk confrontation. This is not unique to interactions within the pack. When a wolf encounters a potential threat or prey, its gaze becomes a tool of assessment and intimidation. The fixed stare of a wolf tracking prey is focused, calculating, predatory. It measures distance, anticipates movement, prepares for the moment of attack. For the creature on the receiving end of that stare, whether another wolf, a deer, or even a human who wanders too close, the message is unmistakable. I see you. I am watching you. Be wary. Wolves, like many predators, have evolved to use their eyes as instruments of their survival. Their gaze is sharp, their focus intense. When they look at something, they truly look, with an attention that borders on unnerving for those who find themselves the subject of that attention. For thousands of years, this was the nature of the canine gaze. Direct eye contact from a wolf was something to be avoided, a signal of danger, a promise of potential aggression. The eyes of a predator held no warmth, no invitation to connection. They held only the cold calculation of survival. But then something changed. Over the course of thousands of years, as wolves began to live alongside humans, as certain individuals found themselves drawn to the warmth of human fires and the promise of food scraps, a transformation began. It was not immediate, it was not planned, but it was profound. The wolves that stayed, that chose proximity to humans over the wild, began to change in ways both behavioral and anatomical. And nowhere was this change more remarkable than in the muscles around their eyes. Scientists studying the anatomy of modern dogs and comparing it to that of wolves have made a fascinating discovery. There is a tiny muscle located just above the eye near the nose that allows for a very specific movement. This muscle, called the levator anguli oculi medialis, though you might simply know it by its abbreviation, LAOM, is responsible for raising the inner portion of the eyebrow. In dogs, this muscle is consistently present, well developed, and readily capable of creating significant movement. In wolves, however, it tells a different story. When researchers dissected the faces of wolves and compared them to dogs, they found that in wolves, the LAOM exists only as a sparse collection of muscle fibers, sometimes barely present at all, often hindered by connective tissue that limits its function. Where dogs have a robust muscle capable of lifting the inner eyebrow in that distinctive expression we all recognize, wolves have only the whisper of that capability. The difference is stark. The transformation is complete. This is not merely an academic curiosity. This single anatomical difference translates directly into behavioral differences that anyone who has ever met a dog can recognize. When researchers observed dogs and wolves interacting with humans, they found that dogs produce this eyebrow-raising movement significantly more often than wolves do, and with far greater intensity. In fact, the highest intensity versions of this movement were produced exclusively by dogs. Wolves, even those raised by humans from puppies, even those comfortable with human presence, simply do not use this expression in the same way. The muscle itself tells another story. Within muscle tissue, there are two primary types of fibers. Slow twitch fibers contract more slowly and are used for sustained, steady movements. Fast twitch fibers contract rapidly and are responsible for quick, reactive movements. In the faces of wolves, the muscles are predominantly composed of slow-twitch fibers, creating a certain placidity in their expressions. But in dogs, the composition has shifted dramatically. Between 66 and 95% of the muscle fibers in a dog's face are fast-twitch fibers, compared to only about 25% in wolves. What this means in practice is that dog faces move quickly, react rapidly, create expressions that change in the blink of an eye. A dog can go from calm to excited, from neutral to pleading, with a speed that wolf faces simply cannot match. Their expressions are more animated, more variable, more, if we dare to use the word, more human-like in their quick transitions and emotive range. And what of that specific movement, that raising of the inner eyebrow that the LAOM muscle creates? What effect does it have? When a dog performs this movement, several things happen simultaneously. The eyes appear larger, the face takes on a more youthful, more infant-like appearance. The expression bears an uncanny resemblance to an expression that humans make when we are sad or vulnerable. It is an expression that speaks directly to something deep within the human psyche, something that has existed in us since long before dogs came into our lives. In humans, we have a powerful response to the features of infants. Large eyes, a proportionally large head, certain specific facial configurations trigger what researchers call the nurturing response. When we see these features, whether in a human infant, a baby animal, or even a cartoon character designed to appear cute, something shifts in our brains. We feel protective, we feel affectionate, we want to care for, to comfort, to connect. It is an instinct as old as parenthood itself, hardwired into our neural architecture. And here is where the story becomes truly remarkable. When dogs raise their inner eyebrows, when they make those puppy dog eyes, they are essentially triggering this same response. The movement makes their eyes appear larger, giving them that infant-like appearance. It creates an expression that mimics human sadness or vulnerability. And when humans see this expression, our brains respond with a surge of warmth, of affection, of the desire to nurture and protect. But it goes deeper than simple appearance. Scientists studying the biological mechanisms underlying the human-dog bond have discovered something extraordinary about what happens when dogs and humans gaze into each other's eyes. In the body of both species, a hormone called oxytocin begins to increase. Oxytocin, sometimes called the love hormone or the bonding hormone, plays a crucial role in social attachment. In human mothers and their infants, oxytocin surges during activities like nursing and mutual gazing, creating the deep bond between parent and child. When a mother looks into her baby's eyes, her oxytocin levels rise. This causes her to feel more affectionate, more connected, which leads her to gaze more at her infant. When the infant gazes back, its oxytocin levels also rise, strengthening the bond from both directions. It is a positive feedback loop, a self-reinforcing cycle of connection and attachment. What researchers have found is that the exact same mechanism exists between dogs and humans. When dogs and their owners engage in mutual gazing, when they look into each other's eyes, oxytocin levels increase in both the human and the dog. The longer the gaze, the greater the increase. And just as with mothers and infants, this creates a positive feedback loop. The human feels more affection, which leads to more interaction, more gazing, which raises oxytocin further in the dog, which makes the dog more likely to seek out that gaze again. The cycle continues, deepening the bond with each iteration. Intriguingly, when researchers tried to test this same response with wolves and their human handlers, even wolves that had been hand-raised by humans and were comfortable in their presence, the effect did not appear. Wolves rarely held prolonged gazes with humans. When they did look at their handlers, the oxytocin levels did not show the same increases. The positive feedback loop, so powerful between dogs and humans, simply did not exist between wolves and humans in the same way. This suggests something profound. During the process of domestication, dogs did not just learn to tolerate humans or to live alongside us. They evolved specific biological and behavioral traits that allowed them to tap into our neural systems for bonding and attachment. They learned to hijack, in a sense, the mechanisms we use to bond with our own children, creating a cross-species connection that has no parallel in the natural world. And that little muscle, that LAOM, that raises the inner eyebrow, sits at the heart of this connection. When a dog makes that expression, when it raises its inner eyebrows and makes its eyes appear large and sad, it is doing something that wolves cannot do, something that was not part of the ancestral canine repertoire. It is speaking in a language that humans understand on a visceral, instinctive level. It is saying, in effect, care for me, protect me, love me. The power of this expression has been documented in ways both scientific and anecdotal. In one study, researchers observed dogs in animal shelters and tracked how quickly they were adopted. The dogs that made puppy dog eyes more frequently, that raised their inner eyebrows more often when potential adopters looked at them, were adopted significantly faster than those who did not. Without any conscious awareness of what they were doing, these dogs were using their evolved facial anatomy to increase their chances of finding homes, of forming bonds with humans. The timeline of this transformation is equally remarkable. Dogs and wolves share a common ancestor that lived approximately 33,000 years ago. In evolutionary terms, this is a blink of an eye, an astonishingly short period for such significant anatomical changes to occur. The fact that this muscle developed, became standardized across virtually all dog breeds, and came to be used so consistently in interactions with humans, suggests that it conferred a powerful selective advantage. Dogs with expressive eyebrows, dogs capable of making puppy dog eyes, were more likely to receive care, protection, and resources from humans. They were more likely to survive, to reproduce, to pass on their traits. Generation after generation, the ability to make this expression became more prevalent, more pronounced, until it became one of the defining features that separates dogs from their wolf ancestors. It is worth pausing to appreciate the elegance of this evolution. Dogs did not develop language. They did not learn to use tools or build structures. What they developed was something perhaps more powerful in its simplicity, the ability to look at us and make us feel. With a simple raising of the inner eyebrow, a slight widening of the eyes, they can bypass our rational mind and speak directly to our emotional core. They can make us feel protective, affectionate, connected, all without uttering a single sound. And we, for our part, respond. We cannot help but respond. When a dog looks at us with those eyes, when it makes that expression, millennia of evolution whisper to us that this creature needs our care, deserves our affection, has earned our love. The biological mechanisms that bind us to our children extend outward to encompass these animals who have walked alongside us for so long. As you drift toward sleep now, imagine that transformation playing out over thousands of years. Imagine the first dogs, still wolf-like in so many ways, beginning to make that expression, perhaps accidentally at first, and seeing humans respond with warmth and food and protection. Imagine the slow strengthening of that muscle, generation by generation, as the dogs who could make the expression more effectively thrived. Imagine the deepening of the bond between the two species, facilitated by something as simple as a gaze, as profound as the oxytocin that flowed through both their bodies when their eyes met. The next time you look into your dog's eyes and feel that surge of affection, know that you are experiencing something extraordinary. You are participating in a cross-species bond that has been 33,000 years in the making, a connection facilitated by a muscle that exists in dogs but not in their wild cousins, a relationship strengthened by hormones that flow when two very different species simply look at each other. The language of the gaze, it turns out, is one of the most eloquent languages ever evolved, and dogs, in their wisdom and their adaptability, learn to speak it fluently. And so, as that chapter settles like stardust upon the night, a new path begins to shimmer just beyond the horizon. The world shifts almost imperceptibly, different yet comfortingly familiar, as though we are turning a page in a dream that continues without ever fully waking. Let us wander forward, unhurried, into the next story waiting to cradle our thoughts. Consider for a moment the physical structure that makes this perception possible. Inside a dog's nose, there exists an intricate landscape of tissue and bone, folded and convoluted to maximize surface area. These are the turbinate bones, delicate scrolls of thin bone covered in olfactory epithelium, the specialized tissue that contains scent receptors. In humans, this olfactory surface is small, roughly the size of a postage stamp in each nostril. But in dogs, depending on the breed, this same surface can spread to the size of a handkerchief, sometimes even larger in breeds like bloodhounds. More surface area means more receptors, more chances for scent molecules to bind and be detected. And the number of these receptors is staggering. Where humans possess approximately 6 million olfactory receptors, dogs have between 125 million and 300 million, depending on the breed. Each receptor is specialized, designed to bind with specific molecules or families of molecules. Together, they form a vast network capable of detecting thousands upon thousands of distinct odors, each one triggering a unique pattern of neural activation that the dog's brain interprets as a specific smell. But it is not merely the quantity of receptors that makes a dog's nose so extraordinary. It is the architecture of the entire system, the way every element works in concert. The nose itself, that wet, textured surface that we find so distinctive, serves a critical function. The moisture helps capture scent particles from the air, dissolving them so they can be absorbed by the olfactory receptors. When a dog licks its nose, which it does frequently, it is not merely keeping it moist. It is transferring scent particles to the vomeronasal organ, also called Jacobson's organ, a secondary olfactory system located in the roof of the mouth that specializes in detecting pheromones and other chemical signals. Two systems working in tandem, each contributing its own layer of information. And then there is the brain. In humans, approximately 5% of our brain is dedicated to processing olfactory information. In dogs, that figure rises to 33%. Imagine what it would be like if a third of your brain's processing power was devoted to a single sense. The olfactory bulb, the structure that receives and processes signals from the nose, is proportionally 40 times larger in dogs than in humans. This massive neural investment translates directly into capability. Dogs can detect scents at concentrations measured in parts per trillion, thresholds so low that they approach the theoretical limits of detection for individual molecules. The way dogs breathe when they are investigating a scent is equally remarkable. When we humans inhale through our noses, air travels in through our nostrils, passes through the nasal cavity, and continues down into our lungs. When we exhale, that same air reverses its path, exiting through the same route it entered. This means that incoming scents can be pushed out by outgoing air, reducing our ability to detect faint odors. Dogs, however, have evolved a different system. When a dog sniffs, which it can do in rapid bursts of 3 to 7 inhalations per second, the air follows two separate pathways. Approximately 12 to 13% of the inhaled air travels along an upper pathway that leads directly to the olfactory receptors, where it deposits its cargo of scent molecules. The remaining air travels along a lower pathway to the lungs for breathing. When the dog exhales, that air does not exit through the nostrils as ours does. Instead, it exits through slits on the sides of the nose, creating small air currents that actually help draw new scents into the nostrils. This means dogs can sniff continuously without needing to pause for regular breathing. They can inhale fresh, scent-laden air while simultaneously processing the scents they have already collected, a feat of biological engineering that gives them an enormous advantage in tracking and detection. For a dog, scent is not merely present or absent, strong or weak. It is layered, three-dimensional, temporal. When a dog encounters a scent trail, it is perceiving information across multiple dimensions simultaneously. There is the ground scent, deposited where a person or animal has walked, compressed into the earth, or absorbed by vegetation. This ground scent can persist for hours, sometimes days, depending on weather conditions and the substrate. Then there is the air scent, the cloud of molecules that rises from a living creature, carried by air currents, dispersing and diluting as it travels. Air scent is fresher, more immediate, but also more transient, disappearing quickly once its source moves on. A skilled tracking dog can distinguish between these layers, can determine not only where something has been, but how long ago it passed, which direction it traveled, even subtle details about its emotional state. When humans walk, we shed approximately 50 million skin cells every minute. These cells, mixed with sweat and the bacteria that lives on our skin, create a unique scent signature, what trackers call rafts. Each person's raft is distinct, a chemical fingerprint as unique as the patterns on our fingertips. Dogs can follow these invisible trails across vast distances, through changing terrain, even through water. or across surfaces we would think impossible to track. They perceive time in scent. An old trail smells different from a fresh one. The volatile compounds that make up a scent change as they age, breaking down, reacting with oxygen, evaporating. A dog investigating a trail can tell not just that something passed by, but approximately when, sorting the layers of scent the way we might sort pages in a book, oldest to newest, each one telling part of the story. They perceive emotion in scent. When humans experience stress, fear, or excitement, our bodies release hormones and neurotransmitters, cortisol, adrenaline, others. These chemicals make their way to our skin surface, where they evaporate into the air. To us, these changes are invisible, undetectable. To a dog, they are as obvious as a shout. This is why dogs seem to sense when their owners are anxious or upset, why they can distinguish between a stranger moving calmly and one who is nervous or aggressive. They are not reading body language alone. They are detecting the chemical signals that our emotional states generate. This extraordinary sense, developed over millennia for hunting and survival, has found new purpose in the modern world. In recent decades, researchers have discovered that dogs can detect diseases in humans, identifying cancers and other illnesses through their scent. The science behind this capability lies in volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, molecules that are released by living cells. Healthy cells release one pattern of VOCs. Diseased cells, particularly cancerous ones, release different patterns. When cells become cancerous, their metabolism changes. They grow faster, divide more rapidly, consume nutrients differently. These metabolic changes produce waste products, break down molecules that are released into the bloodstream and eventually exhaled in breath, excreted in urine, secreted in sweat. To human noses, these changes are imperceptible. By the time a human can detect the scent of disease, it has usually reached advanced stages. But dogs can detect these molecular signatures at concentrations far too low for us to perceive, sometimes years before conventional diagnostic methods would identify the disease. Studies have shown that trained dogs can detect lung cancer by smelling breath samples with sensitivity rates around 86% and specificity around 72%. Other studies have demonstrated detection of breast cancer, colorectal cancer, prostate cancer, ovarian cancer, even blood cancers. In one remarkable study, a dog was able to correctly identify breast cancer in urine samples with 100% accuracy among 200 test subjects. The dog was not detecting tumors directly, but rather the subtle changes in VOC patterns that the presence of cancer creates. The training process is fascinating. Dogs are presented with samples, some from healthy individuals, others from patients with known cancers. When the dog correctly identifies a cancer sample, it receives a reward, usually a treat or a favorite toy. Over weeks and months of training, the dog learns to recognize the specific pattern of VOCs associated with that particular type of cancer. The dogs do not need to understand what cancer is. They simply learn that one smell means reward and another does not. Their natural talent for scent discrimination does the rest. But cancer is not the only disease dogs can detect. They have been trained to alert their owners to oncoming seizures, to detect dangerous drops in blood sugar in diabetic patients, to identify infections, to sense when someone is about to experience a heart arrhythmia. In each case, the dog is detecting chemical changes in the body that precede visible symptoms, changes measured in parts per billion or trillion, concentrations that even the most sophisticated medical instruments struggle to detect. And this is perhaps the most humbling aspect of a dog's sense of smell. Despite all our technological advancement, despite mass spectrometers and gas chromatographs and electronic noses, we have not been able to fully replicate what a dog's nose can do naturally. Our instruments can identify specific molecules if we know what we are looking for. But a dog can detect patterns within complex mixtures, can distinguish between thousands of overlapping scents, can track a single scent trail through an environment saturated with competing odors. A dog can smell the difference between identical twins. It can detect a fingerprint on a glass slide that has been left outside in the rain for 24 hours. It can follow a trail that is days old, picking out the path of one specific individual from all the other humans and animals that have crossed that same ground. The architecture of scent, as dogs experience it, is a cathedral of invisible information, vast and intricate beyond our imagining. Every breath they take brings new data, new stories written in molecules. The world they perceive is richer than ours in ways we can barely conceptualize. A layered, temporal, emotionally resonant landscape constructed entirely of smell. Where we see a park, they smell the dog that passed by yesterday morning, slightly anxious, the squirrel that dug in that spot last week, the child who dropped ice cream on that bench 3 days ago, the approaching storm carried on air currents from miles away. It is a reminder, as you drift toward sleep now, of how much exists beyond the limits of our perception, how much richness surrounds us that we cannot detect, cannot process, cannot even imagine. The dogs who share our lives move through this invisible world with ease, navigating layers of information we will never access, reading stories written in chemistry and carried on the wind. They are travelers in a realm we can only visit through imagination, equipped with senses we cannot duplicate with all our technology and science. Let that thought settle over you like a blanket. The world is larger, stranger, more layered than it appears. And somewhere, a dog sleeps peacefully, its nose still processing the faint scents that drift through the night air, even in rest. Its brain, dedicated to the architecture of scent, building maps of the invisible world, tracking the movements of the visible one through the trails it leaves behind. A sense beyond sight, beyond hearing, beyond anything we fully understand. The language of molecules, spoken fluently by these creatures who chose to walk beside us, bringing with them gifts we are only beginning to comprehend. Every story leaves behind a gentle footprint in the quiet of our imagination. And as we step away from the one we've just shared, another doorway opens softly before us. There is no rush, only the steady rhythm of breath and the comforting promise that something new, calm, and beautiful is ready to be discovered. Let yourself settle now. Feel the softness beneath your head, the gentle weight of your blankets. Your breathing slows, deepens. Tonight, we explore one of the most remarkable transformations in the natural world, a living experiment in genetics and partnership that has unfolded over tens of thousands of years. We journey through the story of how a single species, the dog, became hundreds of distinct forms, each one a reflection of human needs, human desires, human dreams. Close your eyes and let us travel through time, watching as wolves became chihuahuas, as wild hunters became palace companions, as a partnership shaped both species in ways neither could have imagined. This is the story of the sculpted companion, the radical transformation of the dog through human hands. In the beginning, there was the wolf. Gray wolves, powerful predators with thick coats and piercing eyes, ranged across the northern hemisphere. They lived in packs, hunted large prey, survived in harsh climates. And then, somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 years ago, though the exact date remains uncertain, something changed. Some wolves began to live alongside humans. Perhaps they were drawn by food scraps at camp edges. Perhaps humans took in wolf pups and raised them. However it began, a partnership formed, and those wolves who could tolerate human presence, who were friendlier, less aggressive, began to thrive. Over thousands of years, these proto-dogs began to change. Not dramatically at first, not with the explosive diversity we see today, but subtly. Their skulls became slightly different. Their teeth grew smaller. Their behavior shifted, becoming more attuned to human cues, more accepting of human authority. Recent research examining over 600 ancient canid skulls spanning 50,000 years has revealed something remarkable. By 11,000 years ago, dogs already showed substantial diversity in skull size and shape. Long before breed standards, before dog shows, before kennel clubs, dogs had already begun to diversify. Some had long muzzles suited for chasing prey. Others had broader heads, powerful jaws for gripping. Still others were smaller, more delicate, perhaps already beginning the journey toward companionship rather than work. For most of human history, dogs were bred for function, not form. If you needed a dog to hunt deer, you bred dogs that could run fast and had keen noses. If you needed a dog to guard your flock, you bred dogs that were large, protective, alert to threats. If you needed a dog to catch rats in your barn, you bred dogs that were quick, tenacious, small enough to pursue rodents into tight spaces. The appearance mattered only insofar as it affected performance. A hunting dog's color was irrelevant unless it helped or hindered the hunt. A herding dog's ear shape was unimportant unless it somehow affected its ability to work. Different regions developed different types of dogs, suited to local needs. In the Arctic, people bred dogs with thick coats and powerful builds to pull sleds across frozen landscapes. In the mountains of Tibet, they bred large guardian dogs with heavy fur to protect livestock from wolves and snow leopards. In the deserts of Africa, they bred lean, fast dogs adapted to heat. Each type reflected the environment and the work required, but these were not breeds in the modern sense. They were types, varieties, kinds. There were no written standards, no registries, no judges declaring one dog superior to another based on the precise angle of its ear or the exact curve of its tail. Then came the 19th century, and everything changed. In 1859, in Newcastle upon Tyne in England, the first formal dog show took place. It featured setters and pointers working gun dogs. The show was a novelty, a curiosity, but it sparked something. Within years, dog shows became increasingly popular. spreading across England and then beyond. In 1873, the Kennel Club was established in Britain, followed in 1884 by the American Kennel Club. These organizations did something unprecedented. They began to define breeds not by function, but by form. They created written standards that described in precise detail what each breed should look like: how tall, how heavy, what color, what ear shape, what tail carriage. The Victorian era was obsessed with classification, with standardization, with perfection through selective breeding. This was the age when everything was being categorized, measured, improved. Railways had standardized time across the country in 1847. The Whitworth thread had standardized screws and bolts in 1841. Football had established unified rules in 1863. Now, the dog fancy, as the enthusiasts called themselves, set out to standardize dogs. Where once there had been dozens of terms for different types of dogs, kinds, races, sorts, strains, types, varieties, now there would be only one term: breed. The transformation was revolutionary. Breeds became like blocks on a paint color card, discrete, uniform, standardized. Where there had been just 2 types of terrier recognized in the 1840s, by the end of the Victorian period, there were 10. Today, there are 27. The Kennel Club recognized approximately 40 breeds in 1875. Today, between various kennel clubs worldwide, there are over 400 recognized breeds, each one defined by exacting standards that dictate everything from the precise shade of coat color to the exact proportions of limb length to body size. Some of these new breeds were ancient types finally being codified, but others were inventions, creations, assemblages. Consider the Irish Wolfhound, a breed that had vanished from Ireland in the mid-18th century when wolves were hunted to extinction. In the 1860s, an English ex-army officer named George Augustus Graham decided to resurrect this legendary breed. He had an ideal in mind, drawn from ancient descriptions that spoke of dogs large enough to take on lions, 5 feet tall at the shoulder. He began with what few dogs he could find that might carry wolfhound blood, but had little success. So he turned to crossbreeding. He used Scottish deerhounds for their similar hunting heritage. He added Great Danes for size, Tibetan dogs for coat, Borzoi for the right physique. Over years of careful selection, he sculpted a dog that matched his vision of what the Irish Wolfhound should be. In 1879, he showed his creation at the Irish Kennel Club show in Dublin. The breed was declared resurrected. A new old dog had been invented. This was the Victorian method. Start with an ideal, a picture in the mind of what perfection looks like, and then breed toward that ideal. It did not matter if the trait served any function. It did not matter if pursuing extreme characteristics caused health problems. What mattered was conforming to the standard, achieving the aesthetic ideal that judges would reward at shows. Dogs with the flattest faces won prizes. Dogs with the longest backs, the shortest legs, the most wrinkled skin, the largest size or smallest size, these became champions. And champions became breeding stock. Their genes spreading through their breeds, sometimes with unfortunate consequences. But alongside this transformation of working dogs into show dogs, another change had been happening for much longer. Some dogs had been companions for millennia. In ancient China, the Pekingese had been bred so small They could fit inside the wide sleeves of a nobleman's robe. Picture it, the soft silk of expensive fabric, dyed in rich colors, imperial yellow perhaps, reserved for royalty. The gentle weight of a tiny dog nestled in that sleeve, warm against the wearer's arm as they walked through palace halls. The sound of wooden heels clicking on polished stone floors, the scent of incense drifting from bronze burners, and there, hidden in fabric, a living treasure, a dog that existed solely to provide comfort and companionship. For centuries, these tiny dogs could be owned only by members of the Chinese imperial palace. They were not workers. They had no job beyond being loved, being held, being admired. Similarly ancient were the ancestors of breeds like the Maltese, so old that their origins are lost to history. Wealthy Greek and Roman women carried these small white dogs as companions. Their soft fur a luxury, their small size a convenience. The Shih Tzu, the lion dog, bred in Tibetan palaces. The Lhasa Apso, guardian of monasteries but also companion to monks. The pug, another Chinese treasure. These lap dogs represented something fundamental about the human relationship with dogs. They were bred not for what they could do, but for how they made people feel. Their small size meant they could be carried, held, kept close. Their temperaments were gentle, friendly, eager to please. Many were bred for what scientists call neoteny, the retention of juvenile characteristics into adulthood. Large eyes, short muzzles, high foreheads, proportions that resembled human babies. These features triggered nurturing instincts in their owners, making the dog seem perpetually young, perpetually in need of care and protection. In European courts, lap dogs became fashion accessories and status symbols. The papillon, named for its butterfly-like ears, appears in portraits of European royalty dating back to the 13th century. Imagine a Renaissance palace, the great halls hung with tapestries showing hunting scenes, battles, royal genealogies. But in the private chambers, quieter spaces, there sits a noblewoman in a gown of heavy velvet, perhaps deep burgundy or forest green, the fabric so thick it holds its shape without the wearer moving. Her lap is occupied by a small dog with silky fur and those distinctive ears, alert and delicate. The dog is warm against her legs, its breathing slow and steady, a living cushion, a comfort, a companion. The Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, named for the English king who adored them in the 17th century, was bred specifically to warm laps and provide comfort. They were called Spaniel Gentle or Comforters, dogs whose entire purpose was emotional support. In an era before central heating, when stone castles were cold even in summer, these small dogs provided physical warmth. But more than that, they provided something less tangible, but equally valuable: companionship, loyalty, unconditional affection in a world where political alliances shifted and trust was rare. As centuries passed and society changed, the roles dogs played evolved with it. The Industrial Revolution brought urbanization. Fewer people needed dogs to hunt or herd or guard farms, but people still wanted dogs, perhaps even more so in crowded cities where loneliness could be profound despite or because of the press of humanity. Dogs that could thrive in smaller spaces became more desirable. Breeds were miniaturized. The standard poodle, originally a water retriever, was bred down in size to create the miniature poodle and then the toy poodle. The Yorkshire Terrier started as a rat catcher in mills, but was bred smaller and smaller until it became a lapdog, carried by fashionable ladies. Today, when you see the extraordinary diversity of dog breeds, you are looking at a living record of human history, human needs, human aesthetics. The Siberian Husky speaks of Arctic survival, of humans who needed transportation across frozen wastes. The Border Collie tells of pastoral life, of shepherds on hillsides who needed intelligent partners to manage flocks. The Dachshund, with its long body and short legs, was designed specifically to pursue badgers into their burrows, its very shape a solution to a hunting problem. The Great Dane towers over other breeds because it was bred to hunt wild boar, to be large enough to intimidate and powerful enough to hold dangerous prey. But alongside these functional breeds, the companion breeds tell a different story. They speak of wealth that allowed for dogs with no job but to be loved. They speak of changing attitudes toward animals, a growing recognition that dogs could be more than tools, that they could be friends, family members, sources of comfort in difficult times. The breeds bred for baby-like features speak to our deep instincts to nurture, to protect. The dogs bred to be portable speak to our desire to keep our companions close, always within reach. The diversity is staggering. From the nearly hairless Chinese crested to the profusely coated Old English sheepdog, from the 2-pound Chihuahua to the 200-pound Mastiff, from the lightning-fast Greyhound to the dignified, slow-moving Basset Hound. Each breed represents thousands of years of evolution, followed by hundreds or sometimes just dozens of years of intense selective breeding. The speed of the transformation, especially in the Victorian era and beyond, is breathtaking. In less than 2 centuries, humans have created more variety within a single species than exists in entire families of wild animals that have been evolving for millions of years. This transformation has not been without cost. Some breeds suffer from genetic problems caused by the closed breeding populations that kennel clubs require. Hip dysplasia in German Shepherds, breathing difficulties in bulldogs and pugs with their flattened faces, deafness in Dalmatians, back problems in Dachshunds. The pursuit of extreme characteristics has sometimes compromised health and quality of life. But alongside these concerns, there is also beauty in what has been created. The partnership between humans and dogs has produced creatures of remarkable variety, each one adapted not to a natural ecological niche, but to a human need, a human desire. As you drift toward sleep, imagine the journey from wolf to dog, from dog to hundreds of breeds, from wild hunter to palace companion, from working partner to lap warmer. Each breed a chapter in the story of human civilization, each one reflecting what we valued, what we needed, what we dreamed of in our relationship with these animals who chose to live beside us. The transformation continues still. New breeds are recognized. Old breeds are refined. Crossbreeds and designer dogs blur the lines between established breeds. The story is not finished. The sculpting continues, shaped by changing human lives, changing human needs. And somewhere tonight, across the world, a Peking cheese sleeps on silk cushions, as its ancestors did in Chinese palaces 1,000 years ago. A Border Collie dreams of sheep on Scottish hillsides, genetic memory of work its ancestors performed for centuries. A Chihuahua curls in someone's lap, bred specifically to be small enough to be held in 2 hands, to be carried everywhere, to be a constant companion, and in that diversity, In that incredible range of size and shape and temperament lies the story of what humans can create when we partner with another species across thousands of generations. A living sculpture shaped by need and desire, by function and fancy, by love. Now, as the night stretches peacefully onward, the last images dissolve like mist in the moonlight. In their place, a new scene begins to gather, slow, steady, and warm. Allow yourself to drift with it as the next story unfolds in its own quiet time, carrying you gently further into rest. Imagine a wolf in the wild, thousands of years ago. Its nose is a magnificent instrument of survival, holding approximately 14 times more olfactory surface area than a human nose. Where humans possess roughly 6 million scent receptors, this wolf has perhaps 300 million, each one capable of detecting specific molecules, specific chemical signatures. The wolf can smell prey from nearly 2 miles away when wind conditions are favorable. It can distinguish between fresh trails and those left days or even weeks earlier. It can tell from scent alone whether another wolf is male or female, young or old, healthy or sick, ready to mate or not. This wolf uses its nose to survive. When hunting, it moves methodically through its territory until it catches the scent of elk or deer. Then it follows that chemical trail, reading the story written in molecules. The freshness of the scent tells it how long ago the animal passed. The concentration tells it which direction the animal moved. The wolf can even determine from scent whether prey is healthy and strong or weakened by injury or illness. Information that helps the pack decide whether to pursue or conserve energy for easier targets. Scent is not just one sense among many for the wolf. It is the primary lens through which it understands the world. The wolf also uses scent to communicate with its pack. Each wolf has specialized glands near its tail and around its anus that produce unique chemical signatures, as individualistic as human fingerprints. When wolves mark territory, when they greet each other, when they signal their status within the pack hierarchy, they are exchanging information through scent. A dominant wolf can read submission in the pheromones of a subordinate. A male can detect when a female is entering estrus. The chemical conversation never stops, a constant exchange of molecular messages that shapes every aspect of pack life. But then, something began to change. Some wolves, drawn to human campsites, began to spend more time around our ancestors. They survived on scraps, on the margins of human activity. And over thousands of years, as these proto-dogs evolved alongside us, their sensory priorities began to shift. They still possessed that extraordinary olfactory system, those hundreds of millions of receptors, that massive brain area dedicated to processing smell. But the focus of that system began to turn from prey to partner, from tracking elk across the steppe to tracking the emotional states of the humans who fed them, sheltered them, became their family. Dogs today retain all of the wolf's olfactory capability. They can still track scents across miles, can still distinguish between thousands of different odors, can still extract detailed information from the faintest chemical traces. But they have also evolved something new, something that wolves in the wild do not possess to the same degree. They have evolved an extraordinary sensitivity to human biochemistry. to the molecular signatures of our emotional and physical states. Without any conscious awareness, without any deliberate training, dogs have learned to read us through chemistry, to sense our feelings through the volatile organic compounds we release into the air with every breath, every drop of sweat. The science behind this ability has only recently begun to be understood. When humans experience stress, our bodies undergo a cascade of physiological changes. The sympathetic nervous system activates. Adrenaline floods into our bloodstream. Our adrenal glands release cortisol, sometimes called the stress hormone. Our heart rate increases. Our blood pressure rises. We begin to sweat, even if we do not notice it. And with that sweat, with our breath, we release volatile organic compounds, specific molecules that are produced by our stressed metabolism. These compounds are present in minuscule quantities, measured in parts per million or even parts per billion. To human noses, they are completely undetectable. The person sitting next to someone who is stressed cannot smell any difference. But to a dog, these changes are obvious. In studies conducted at the University of Bristol and published in 2022, researchers found that dogs could discriminate between breath and sweat samples taken from humans at baseline and samples taken after those same humans had completed stress-inducing tasks. The tasks were simple: public speaking and mental arithmetic, activities designed to trigger the acute stress response. Participant stress was verified through multiple measures, including self-reported anxiety, heart rate, and cortisol levels. When dogs were presented with these samples in controlled trials, they could distinguish between the baseline and stressed samples with an accuracy of 93.75%. Let that sink in for a moment. Dogs could smell stress, could detect the chemical changes that stress produces with near-perfect accuracy. And these were not specially trained medical detection dogs. These were ordinary pet dogs who had been taught the testing procedure but had never been trained to identify stress specifically. The ability appeared to be innate, a natural consequence of their evolutionary partnership with humans. Even more remarkably, when researchers tested whether the odor of stress affected dogs' emotional state, they found that it did. In a cognitive bias test, dogs exposed to the scent of a stressed human became more pessimistic, less likely to approach a food bowl placed in an ambiguous location where they were uncertain whether it would contain a reward. The smell of stress from an unfamiliar human was enough to change the dog's decision-making to make them more cautious, more risk-averse. They were not just detecting stress. They were responding to it emotionally, feeling the stress of another species, as if it were a signal from a member of their own pack. But cortisol is not the only marker dogs can detect. Research on cardiac alert service dogs has revealed even more extraordinary capabilities. These dogs, trained to assist people with heart conditions like postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome and neurocardiogenic syncope, can detect changes in their handler's heart rate and blood pressure before the handler is consciously aware that anything is wrong. The dogs alert their handlers with specific behaviors, giving them time to sit down, take medication, or call for help, often preventing fainting episodes or more serious cardiac events. How do they do this? The exact mechanisms are still being researched, but the leading theory involves both scent and sound. When heart rate and blood pressure change, subtle chemical changes occur in the body. The composition of sweat shifts. Breathing patterns alter. Blood flow to the skin changes, affecting the volatile compounds released through pores. These changes are minute, invisible to human perception, but to a dog's nose, they create a distinct chemical signature. Some researchers also believe dogs may be able to hear changes in heart rhythm, detecting irregular beats or accelerated pulses with their acute hearing, which can perceive sounds 6 to 10 times fainter than humans can detect. Dogs trained as diabetic alert dogs perform similar miracles. They can detect when their handler's blood sugar is dropping or spiking, alerting before hypoglycemia or hyperglycemia cause dangerous symptoms. Again, the mechanism appears to be primarily scent-based. Changes in blood glucose levels produce changes in the volatile organic compounds released through breath and skin. The concentration of certain molecules shifts, creating a scent profile that the dog learns to recognize. Some dogs can detect these changes 15 to 30 minutes before a glucose meter would register dangerous levels, providing a crucial early warning that can prevent medical emergencies. What is perhaps most fascinating is that even untrained dogs who have never been taught to alert to any specific condition, show this sensitivity to human physiology. They cluster near their owners when those owners are sick. They rest their heads on laps when their humans are sad. They become more attentive when stress levels rise. These behaviors, which we often interpret as simple affection or coincidence, may actually be responses to chemical signals the dogs are detecting and interpreting. The biological Wi-Fi is always on, always transmitting, and dogs are always receiving. This sensitivity represents a transformation that took thousands of years to unfold. The wolf's nose evolved to track prey, to identify pack members, to mark territory, has been repurposed through domestication to track human emotional and physical states. Dogs still use their noses to explore the world, to identify other dogs, to find treats hidden in the house. But they also use them to monitor us, to maintain a continuous assessment of our well-being through the invisible language of chemistry. Every time we interact with our dogs, we are having two conversations. One is verbal, conducted through words and tone of voice. The other is chemical, conducted through the molecules we release with every breath and every heartbeat, and the dogs respond. When they detect stress, some dogs become more attentive, pressing close to their owners, offering comfort. Others become anxious themselves, pacing or whining, picking up on the emotional contagion. When they detect calm, they relax, their own stress hormones declining. The chemical conversation flows in both directions. Studies have shown that when dogs and their owners gaze into each other's eyes, oxytocin levels rise in both species, the same bonding hormone that connects human parents to their children. The sight and scent of each other triggers neurochemical changes that reinforce attachment, deepening the bond with each interaction. This is not anthropomorphism, not projection of human feelings onto animals. This is biology, biochemistry, evolution, shaping two species to communicate across the species barrier through channels most of us never consciously perceive. Dogs have become our companions, our helpers, our friends, not just through behavioral training, but through tens of thousands of years of selection that favored individuals who were most attuned to human emotional states. The dogs who could read us best, who could respond appropriately to our moods and needs, were the ones we fed, protected, allowed to reproduce. Generation after generation, the ability to sense and respond to human chemistry became more pronounced, more refined, until it reached the remarkable level we see today. As you drift towards sleep now, imagine that invisible conversation happening around you. The molecules you release with every breath, carrying information about your emotional state, your stress levels, your physical condition. If there is a dog near you, it is reading those molecules, interpreting them, responding in ways you might not consciously notice. The slight shift in its position to be closer when you are anxious. The relaxed sigh when you finally calm down. The alert attention when your heart rate spikes. The biological Wi-Fi, always active, always connecting you. The wolf in the wild still uses its extraordinary nose to track prey, to survive in harsh environments. But the dog lying beside you has turned that same magnificent sensory system toward a different purpose. It tracks not elk or deer, but your well-being. It hunts not for food, but for the subtle signals that tell it how you feel. And in doing so, it maintains a connection between your species and theirs that is unique in the natural world. A bond built on chemistry and evolution, on thousands of years of living together, of learning each other's signals, of becoming, in the deepest biological sense, family. Rest now. Let the understanding of this ancient, invisible bond settle over you like a warm blanket. Somewhere, dogs sleep peacefully, their noses still processing the faint scents that drift through the air, still monitoring the humans they love through channels we can barely imagine. The biological Wi-Fi, the chemical conversation, the molecular language of connection. Silent, invisible, profound, a sense transformed from predator to partner, from tracker of prey to guardian of human well-being. Evolution's gift, written in scent, spoken in chemistry, connecting two species across the vast divide. If you found peace in this exploration of the invisible bonds that connect us, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Pillow Trace for more calming journeys into the hidden wonders of the natural world. Rest well, and may your dreams carry you into that quiet space where chemistry becomes connection, where scent becomes love.